Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hue Learn. Just my business card. I'm putting it down, and I'm going to introduce you to something that's just blown my mind. This is a new pedagogic model and educational system which I want to introduce you to. So it's called 21st Century Learning, but if you look carefully, you can see up there in the corner, this is Hue Learn. It's a metaverse, obviously, and you are going to be taken for a little journey into my world. I'm trying to explain, first of all, what it is, how it works, and more importantly, why it works. So, 21st century learning, of course, this is a cognitive platform. And I say cognitive because I'm distinguishing it from what else is out there in the systems today, mostly behaviorist platforms. We are very cognitive, meaning that we bring neuroscience into our learning systems. Not only that, but it's in the metaverse. You can see that I'm going to point out some of the buttons that are available here. Metaverse is important because we have that interactive connectivity with people who are already playing in the metaverse. All of our children are, and they understand that whole fourth dimensional world that we love to see. Beyond that, there's AI and pedagogy. AI means that we have all kinds of algorithms that help us to make learning not only more efficient, but also more fun. The pedagogy itself, I'm going to go into great detail with because that's where all the magic happens, and that's what engages all of our learners to stay with us. And of course, then there's you. You can be an avatar or you can be in person, whatever you prefer. Either way, it works for us in this new 21st century learning system. So let's start off with, first of all, how to engage in a cognitive way. Attention is the most important part, of course, and we start off always with something really important. It starts with something that we call disequilibrium. And disequilibrium comes from Piaget. Piaget was trying to understand why his children were always reverting to the knowledge they had before his classes. In other words, even though he told them that, yeah, A equals something, they didn't believe him until it made sense to them. In other words, we have to cause a bit of disequilibrium to engage the learning brain. We always start with a challenge question, and we like to have initial thoughts, usually for 1 minute, because that sets up a baseline. And the prediction that happens when I'm trying to predict initiates active cortex. Now, I'm looking at the brain here, and of course, it's a little bit more complex than that, but the active cortex is up in the front area here. That's a higher executive functioning area where we like our students to be when they're involved in learning systems, not in that hindbrain reactive place that says things like school sucks, I hate school, they're better than me, I can't do this. That all that kind of chatter happens in a reactive brain. But when we're doing this in a cognitive space, we always have a brain that's more interested in being not only higher order executive function, but also critical thinking. So let's move to the next part. We have to have content, of course, in our classrooms. Even though we're architecting brains, we like to think about using the content of, we'll say, like physics or math or science or reading or French or art or drama or music, you name it. Any of these content areas are important, and we like to understand them in terms of Miller's Law and chunking. So how we do that, of course, we use multiple perspectives. And we call them MPs. MP1 could be a video. That's up to you as a facilitator. MP2 could be a PDF or a video or an audio, or it could be a piece of a doc form or something to read. MP3. We usually do three MPs because that helps to give enough information for the class to be able to engage and talk about and articulate their thinking. Miller's Law, of course, facilitates all attention. And Miller's Law is very important because that's what indicates the limitations of our working memory space. And in a classroom or in any learning space, working memory space is that critical piece that causes us to either be engaged or not. And so Miller's Law is simple, the magical number three plus or minus two. And that means that on a good day, you might be able to handle five concepts. On a bad day, just one. And since we, as great facilitators and educators, are more interested in the people who are struggling with just one concept or construct, and because we can involve and engage them on that one construct by simplifying things, then we can engage everybody. Obviously, if people can move faster and move ahead, that's okay. We can handle that as well. But we don't want to lose people just because their working memory space has limitations. Next, we like to look at the most important part here is optimizing learning with cognitive 3 R's. Now, we all know the 3 R's. They were reading, writing, arithmetic, and that had to do with content back in the 19th century. A lot of the systems of education are still at the 19th century standards, but we have moved way beyond that today. And our cognitive 3 R's have to do with reflecting, which we usually do for 2 minutes, revising one's thinking, very important in small group work, and we usually do 10 or 12 minutes of that. And then finally, reporting out to the main group. So we work in small groups, sometimes breakout rooms, sometimes around tables in the same room. It doesn't matter, as long as people have an opportunity to reflect, to revise their thinking, and to be part of the report out team. This happens only because we have safe psychological spaces, but also because when we have enough information in our heads to be able to reflect on something and to then hear other people's reflection and to revise our thinking based on that, then we can actually assimilate new knowledge with prior knowledge and have a lot of learning happen. And of course, this causes us to be generative and active in our engagement in the classroom. When I'm generating ideas, I'm in my prefrontal cortex. When I'm contributing, I'm in my prefrontal cortex. When I'm reactive, I'm not. And so we like to have people stay in a generative, active engagement during class. And of course, then we like to scaffold those questions. The idea of reflection that's open ended can be too broad for most people. And so we like to just think about them in terms of three simple questions. The questions are always the same. What was surprising about the information that you just heard? What did you know before but now see different? And then what do you need help with? The important thing here to know is that the three questions are engaging three different parts of the brain so that we can liberate people from that reactive brain into their emotional limbic brain, where they can actually have thinking systems and emotions attached to new information, and also to take that step into that place of frustration and sometimes when we're able to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I have no idea what you're talking about and I need some help. This is a very important place to be because it keeps us um, in our prefrontal cortex, and that's important for us to be in. We can generate and always connect to critical thinking when we have these three questions to work with. The point is that critical thinking is not easy to teach. In fact, many teachers have given up on critical thinking because they're competing with Facebook and Twitter and all of the received opinion. And when people can, particularly students in classrooms, middle and high school and beyond into corporate learning systems, when they can actually say, oh, you know what, that was surprising. I knew that, but now I see it differently based on what you just told me, and I need help with these. This causes people to activate the critical thinking parts of their brain, which is again in the prefrontal cortex and connected to their memory systems, the hippocampus, and also to their emotional systems, the amygdala. And then finally, and this is the most important part, we get into increasing processing speed and power at the synapse. And at the synapse, that's the currency of learning, because our neurons have to fire together, to wire together. They have to engage and start moving electricity and chemicals around in the brain so that we have great learning systems. But when we're intentional about setting up systems that can help us to increase that processing speed and power, we're talking about long-term potentiation. And this comes through because of cognitive rehearsal based on the three questions we just did. We can activate the synapse. And of course, we have to include sleep because that's our big homework. When you have sleep, you cycle through REM and non-REM sleep during the nighttime. That's when the brain is really consolidating the information that it got that previous day. If you've had cognitive rehearsal, then you're going to have dendritic spines increase and myelination happen to increase your activity around that system and increase your working memory space and increase your processing speed and understanding. In this way, we're architecting highly connected brains. This is what it might look like for us. When we look at it from the neuron point of view, you can see that there are axons, there are dendrites, there's a nucleus, there's terminals, and more importantly, there's myelination. And because of that, we've got a learning system that's active because the brain is intensely active around the constructs we're teaching about. So I'm going to go back to square one, start off again in the beginning, and talk to you about what this means. What it really means is that with Hue Learn, with this connection of pedagogy, with this connection to metaverse and AI, we can have systems of learning that will cause our students in high school, middle school, students in learning systems in adult spaces, which might be corporate or whatever trainings you might be in, they can have much better um, comprehension around new and complex systems, but also deep understanding and a sense of accomplishment because they feel that their knowledge is theirs. It's not just memorizing and regurgitating for a test. So I hope you join me in Hue Learn. It's an amazing 21st century cognitive model that will help all of us be better facilitators and indeed better learners. Thank you.